mysterious Frontman, also known as Hwang In-ho, caught our attention with his cold attitude and surprisingly complex backstory. As we wait for the third and final season of Squid Game, theories about In-ho's true story, motivations, and fate have been spreading across the web. So I have gathered the 10 most interesting ones, starting with the redemption. One of the most popular theories states that In-ho, despite his evil role as the Frontman, will find redemption in the final season thanks to his relationship with his brother Jun-ho. Throughout the show, we've seen little glimpses of humanity here and there in the Big Daddy Frontman's otherwise calculated and ruthless character. Remember when he shot Jun-ho in the shoulder in season 1, rather than delivering a fatal blow? He had such an open and easy shot and was injured himself.
더 이상 다가오면 형.
This moment highlighted that beneath the mask, the Frontman still cares for his stepbrother and wants him to live. Some fans believe this connection will be In-ho's breaking point in the new episodes, causing him to betray the Squid Game organization to save Jun-ho's life. If Jun-ho continues his investigation and manages to infiltrate the games again, he'll face execution by the VIPs or masked men if he's discovered. When that moment comes, the fans think the Front Daddy will finally choose family over the competition, placing himself between his brother and certain death. Of course, a sacrifice like this would probably result in In-ho's death, so that'd be really crazy and something nobody would see coming. And with many theories that Gi-hun might become the new Frontman, this scenario fits neatly into the show's potential endgame. All this might sound possible, but it wouldn't be Squid Game without an even more tragic twist. Even if In-ho does save his brother, we shouldn't expect a complete redemption arc. The Frontman has committed too many atrocities over the years, particularly the cold-blooded execution of Jung-bae in season 2. His sacrifice would be driven by family ties rather than any kind of noble play to help innocents he's harmed, stemming from his desire not to lose someone he loves rather than any moral awakening about the games themselves and his role in them. Although this would be pretty touching. There's one family-based theory which has been sending people crazy: father and son. One insane idea that's been gaining traction connects In-ho to the original player 001, Oh Il-nam. Some people suspect that the Frontman might actually be Il-nam's long-lost son. But this is crazy, right? How could anyone believe that? The evidence comes down to milk. Yes, very tasty. In season 1, Il-nam mentions that his son, like Gi-hun, couldn't consume regular milk.
초코우유는 없나요? 제가 흰 우유를 못 먹어서요.
잘해. 어릴 때 아버지한테 많이 맞았겠어.
어떻게 아세요?
우리 아들이 꼭 자네 같았거든.
Fast forward to season 2, and we see In-ho refusing plain milk during a snack break, simply saying, "I don't drink plain milk."
준 씨도 이거 더 마시고 다음 게임까지 힘내요.
아니요, 저 괜찮아요.
아니 그냥 마셔요. 내가 원래 흰 우유를 못 마셔요.
Now it might just be a diet-based coincidence, but the fact has led some viewers to speculate that Il-nam and In-ho share more than just a player number between themselves. If this theory is true, this would add another layer of twisted family dynamics to the series, revealing that the game's creator recruited his own son to run his deadly competition and continue his messed-up torture of innocence. But unfortunately, this milky connection isn't without some holes. First up, In-ho and Jun-ho are established as half-brothers, sharing a father, with Jun-ho's mother referring to In-ho as her stepson. If Il-nam really was In-ho's father, he should logically be Jun-ho's father as well, which contradicts Il-nam's statements about having only one son. I mean, unless the mother's actually sus, this really dents the theory. Also, although both player 001s use the surname Oh within the games, In-ho's actual surname is Hwang, which he shares with his brother. Okay, sure, it might be possible that Il-nam abandoned In-ho at a young age, leading to an adoption that changed his surname, but this is way too circumstantial to be conclusive. One thing we do know, however, is that Squid Game loves its shocking twists, so this dairy-based connection might just be crazy enough to be true. So what if, instead of a family legacy, the title of Frontman was forced on someone, the forced Frontman? According to this theory, In-ho's tragic past involves not just winning the games, but being forced into his current role against his will. The fans suggest that after winning the 2015 games, In-ho tried to return to his normal life with his prize money. However, knowing that he possessed dangerous knowledge about the competition, the organization behind Squid Game gave him an ultimatum: join us or die. Rather than becoming another casualty, In-ho reluctantly accepted the position as Front Daddy since he had no other life left. This would explain his complex character, a man who upholds the same system that traumatized him, maybe out of self-preservation or a twisted belief that the games serve some greater purpose after losing his own. It also sets up the chance that Gi-hun might face the same choice in season 3, since many fans have speculated that he'll become the next frontman. Now that might be crazy, but the next theory is pure insanity, and none of you will see it coming. The double agent. Some fans have the crazy idea that our guy in black might actually be working against the games from within, playing an extremely long game of deception as a double agent. This theory puts forward the argument that everything the frontman has done, including his betrayal of Goku at the end of Season 2, is part of a calculated plan to ultimately bring down the entire Squid Game operation. According to the believers of this theory, In-ho realized that storming the control room with Gohan wouldn't truly end the games. The only way to permanently stop the competition would be to eliminate the VIPs themselves. His execution of Jungbei, while awful, was necessary to maintain his cover and position of power within the organization so that he can reach deep within it later on. The theory states that In-ho is waiting for an evacuation of the island, possibly triggered by Junho's continued investigation, which would present an opportunity to accidentally eliminate the VIPs. He might even be planning to recruit other rebellious members, like Guard 11, to assist in sabotaging the VIPs' escape. If this theory ends up being true, the Frontman's endgame would be to kill the VIPs and allow Junho to hold an official investigation that would permanently shut down the games once and for all. But what exactly is the role of the Frontman? Is he under control of the organization, or is he the top of the food chain, the puppet master? Here's a theory that flips everything we think we know about the power dynamics in Squid Game. What if the Frontman isn't just following orders from the VIPs, but is actually the true mastermind behind the entire operation? This theory put forward the idea that In-ho created or took control of the games after his victory, using the VIPs as sources of cash while keeping them in the dark about his true agenda. His participation as player 001 in Season 2 wasn't just to break Gi-hun's spirit, but to personally experience how his creation has evolved and to identify weaknesses in the system and improve them. The execution of Jungbei wasn't just to maintain his cover, but a calculated move to manipulate Gohan into becoming exactly what In-ho wants him to be.
기훈아.
390번.
A worthy successor who understands both the game's cruelty and their twisted purpose, letting him take over the role of the frontman so he can sit back and manage the rest. If this theory is true, In-ho's ultimate plan could involve something way more advanced than simple entertainment for the rich. Maybe he's doing a massive recruitment scheme for an even more important creation, or creating some kind of twisted world where only the deserving players survive. We've seen hints that he believes the games provide fairness that real society lacks, which could be part of his corrupted worldview, leading him to believe the games should replace real life. This would for sure be interesting, but hard to pull off well. But the next theory would need even more care if it's gonna work. The trauma theory. Maybe the frontman isn't carrying out some grand scheme at all. What if his actions are just driven by severe psychological damage from his own Squid Game experience? This theory suggests that In-ho's time as a player left him with some major PTSD and Stockholm Syndrome, causing him to identify with his captors and eventually adopt their ideology as his own, rather than live with the broken state of mind as a survivor. His commitment to the games isn't rational or logic-based, but instead a psychological coping mechanism that helps him justify the trauma he endured. By enforcing the game's rules with such strictness, he's constantly trying to convince himself that his suffering had meaning and purpose. This would explain his obsession with fairness in the games. If the system is fair, then his victory was earned and all the death around him was justified, rather than signifying his loss of humanity by turning to murder. Through this viewpoint, his relationship with Junho represents the last remaining connection to his pre-trauma self, which is why he couldn't kill his brother outright. At the same time, he can't allow Junho to destroy the games because that would mean facing the horrific reality of what he's become and what he's done. Extremely dark theory, but the next one's even crazier. The copycat killer. Fans have said that it may be the case that, after winning the games and seeing so many players die, In-ho became obsessed with the organization and its methods. Instead of using his winnings to rebuild his life, he used the money and knowledge gained from his participation to recreate the games with himself as the frontman, or pay off someone to get him close to the inner circle of the organization. This would explain certain inconsistencies and why the games seem to evolve between seasons. We're not watching the exact same operation continue. We're watching In-ho's personal version of the games unfold. Maybe the original games ended after In-ho's victory, and what we're seeing now is his twisted tribute or reimagining of them. In this scenario, the VIPs aren't the same people who funded the original games, but wealthy thrill seekers who In-ho has convinced to bankroll his recreation. His ultimate goal might be to create the perfect version of the games, one that surpasses the original in both spectacle and sinister purpose. If true, this would make Frontman even more terrifying, since it would mean he willingly chose to recreate the nightmare that traumatized him rather than being forced into his role, and all the deaths are on his hands by design. That's a very big turn, and a 180 from our next theory. The fallen hero. Here's a very original theory that might explain In-ho's complicated history. What if he began with noble intentions but became corrupted over time? This theory states that after winning the games, In-ho initially planned to use his winnings and knowledge to expose and destroy the organization. But when he infiltrated their ranks and actually got some status, he discovered something that changed his perspective entirely. Maybe he learned that the games were somehow helpful in some twisted way, or that shutting them down would lead to worse consequences for humanity. Maybe the VIPs even threatened to create more brutal games with with no rules or fairness if In-ho didn't cooperate. Or he could have discovered that the money from the games actually funds humanitarian efforts in secret, creating a moral problem where the death of hundreds can save millions worldwide. Over time, this moral compromise corrupted In-ho completely, turning him from a potential hero into the villain we see today, with little light left in his soul. His occasional moments of humanity are crumbs from his original good intentions, fighting through the layers of justification he's built up over time. This would make his potential redemption in Season 3 even more impactful, since it would showcase In-ho finally breaking free from his own moral compromise and returning to his original mission of bringing down the games, even at the cost of his life to help his brother and Gi-hun. The last theory we have is the most twisted and messed up, though. It takes a real sick mind to do this one. Pleasure from pain. What if the frontman's true obsession is with hope itself? This concept means In-ho is fascinated by the concept of hope as a psychological phenomenon, especially false hope. His experiences as a player showed him how powerful hope can be in desperate situations, even when the odds are overwhelmingly against survival. Now, as the frontman, he's basically a collector of hopes and dreams, watching them form, flourish, and then get crushed in spectacular fashion. That's exactly what he did with the revolt in Season 2. His special interest in Gi-hun stems from seeing him as the ultimate hope machine, someone who continues to believe in redemption and justice despite overwhelming evidence that the world is cruel and unfair within the games. By playing as player 001, In-ho wasn't just trying to break Gohan's spirit, he was also studying him up close, observing how his hope functions under extreme pressure and how he impacts those around him. The ultimate goal of the games, according to this theory, isn't money or entertainment or even some twisted social experiment. It's the creation of a perfectly controlled environment to study the rise and fall of human hope itself. In-ho might see himself as an artist or scientist of despair, creating scenarios specifically designed to cultivate and then crush hope in the most dramatic ways possible, which explains the huge mashup of games we see throughout the episodes of the show. So this has been every frontman theory explained. Which do you think is most likely to happen? If you want to see more theories, subscribe and click the video on screen now.